become an Ironclad YouTube member to binge all 4 episodes of Change Agents Black Project on launch day. Otherwise, catch new episodes weekly. Join now, YouTube at This Is Ironclad.
What techniques are, the Chinese and other organizations using to avoid detection? Like, how is it that hard to catch them?
So the challenge for law enforcement, really for the government, is the Chinese criminal elements. They're first of all, the culture and the language is a challenge. Whereas if we would arrest someone in illicit cooperation, they'll figure out maybe I can cooperate, maybe I can get out from underneath this rock. But if you arrest a Chinese national, there's a chance they won't, right? And they'll just eat whatever time they're going to get. So that's a cultural thing. The other thing is the language barrier, trying to explain to them or trying to communicate or even trying to understand that culture. That's one sort of challenge for us. The other challenge for us is the way they compartmentalize. They're very compartmentalized in how they do business, right? Not necessarily the marijuana side, but certainly on the money laundering side. So the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And so when you have a language and a cultural barrier, it's a challenge for law enforcement to infiltrate and go after them. I will say this, just in the last 10 years, we've gotten so much better at doing it because we put a lot more emphasis on it.
How does it differ for the Chinese when they're using black market marijuana compared to fentanyl distribution, synthetic drugs? Like, is there a big difference in why they're so much more successful with this kind of marijuana is a big thing for them?
Yes, they're so successful because of a few things. I mean, we talked about it. The legalization really pulled back law enforcement scrutiny. And even when we do arrest, there's been so many cases where we've arrested a Chinese criminal network, and there's been a declination from a prosecutor's office saying, well, we're not going to decline. We're going to decline to prosecute. And that's because now they're tied up in state laws and federal laws, and there's no really willingness to pursue that the way that it should be. Now, keep in mind, I do stand strongly behind that if a state legalization and their laws and their policy wants to really hold effect and uphold the rule of law within that state, then they have to pursue the black market marijuana. Because if anything, that state is losing billions and billions of dollars of revenue. And it can't just be a slap on the wrist. They have to hold them accountable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that's super. It's extremely fascinating when someone has a legal state. I think it's California and Colorado currently are the ones that are just kind of openly legal, right? Is that correct? Those
Right.
2 states?
Oh, there's many. Yeah.
Oh, there's more than that are having legal.
Yeah, there's like 36 states that have some form of legalization. Whether it's medicinal and more, it's just, there's, you could smoke like New York State. I mean, you could grow 6 marijuana plants in your house and you're fine. So there is no recourse. And quite frankly, from a DEA perspective, if you said, "Hey, Ray, where are you going to designate or push your resources towards a criminal group?" I would put my resources towards fentanyl trafficking more. But what happens is you'll see these poly groups that cross over, and where it crosses over, quite frankly, is with Chinese criminal elements. Because I would often have a fentanyl distribution network in New York City that is run by a group of Dominicans, right, that are bringing fentanyl, the money that they got from fentanyl trafficking with distribution, to Chinese in Queens or in Brooklyn. And then that same Chinese group is involved with marijuana trafficking as well. So it crosses over, and it crosses over other drugs too. So it's really interesting how the evolution of drug trafficking has taken place because of technology and money and some of the changes in laws over time.
When we talk about laws, I've heard things like, the state legalizes it, but federal doesn't. how does that work? I've never really fully understood that. Like, if I had a dispensary and I'm selling millions, at any point the federal government could just come in and take that because federally it's still illegal. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And
That
why
is
would a
correct.
federal organization for some reason decide, okay, now I'm going to focus on your company? Is it because maybe there's some kind of illicit kind of activity and then kind of
That
identifies them and targets them?
That's right. That's right. So it goes back to the Holder memo in 2014. So most federal agencies took a step back, especially as it related to legal state dispensaries and manufacturers, right? So black market marijuana organizations, they still are getting pursued, certainly grows on government land in California and other places. They're pursued rigorously still. The challenge is kind of what's going to happen next with marijuana, because it's really, quite frankly, it's up in the air. And I do have some concerns on what that means. I understand the legalizations on one end and the pull and the fact that in many states the train has left the station, but federally, what does that really entail? Being in law enforcement for 28 years, I know that often would be the case that marijuana distribution at the local level caused a lot of violence, a lot of violence. It wouldn't be the hardcore drugs like people often would think it would be, like fentanyl, methamphetamine. You see a lot of property crimes, but for some reason, marijuana would be a lot of gang on gang violence in some of the major cities throughout the United States. So I do have some concerns. I have other concerns as it relates to marijuana, as far as like just youth, kids using it, and then the long-term effects of it. And so the science is not there yet, and I think we have to really get behind the science before we change anything.
Yeah, I know there's people that use it for pain medicinally, like legitimately using it for pain or whatnot. And there's a lot of people that go get medicinal, IDs just because they can, just so they can use it recreationally. So
Right.
it's a really weird gray area that I've never really understood. And I guess I see it's like, well, you can focus on marijuana or you can focus on the one that's probably killing more people, and that's fentanyl. So let's focus there.
Right, right. Well, it's just from a leadership management perspective of resources, you want to go where the biggest damage is and try to save as many lives as possible. And that's where fentanyl is just very destructive, right? Methamphetamine, destructive. Do I think marijuana is destructive? Long term, I do. I think it does change. I understand, because I know plenty of people are in the same boat, Vince, that either smoke it for medicinal uses or recreational, right? And should those people be arrested? Absolutely not. I'm not, I'm not interested in pursuing or arresting people that use drugs. It doesn't make any sense. But there are foreign elements that prey on Americans each and every day and look for people that are susceptible to addiction to generate billions of dollars. And that's what we need to focus on.
Yeah, it's really cool hearing you say that because you're former DEA agent, but as well as people going to use drugs. It's the people that are targeting them and using almost they're vulnerable and they're using that vulnerability to gain financial stability essentially through their manipulation and corruption and everything else that's going on behind the doors. It's fascinating. Here's something crazy, and this wherever you want to go with this, just
Okay.
stick with me here. I've had 4 guests now on the show. When I ask the question, what is the answer? They give me really smart, evidence-based ideas. And the number one idea is legalizing drugs across the board. Part of their conversation goes, we've tried to, criminalize it. We've done, and that has very little change. Look at the country now. From your perspective, how do you feel about that notion? If we decide to just legalize drugs across the board, obviously regulate them in some capacity, just like you've seen as a case study, the marijuana situation. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are we've been down this road before. There's already
Have
been
we?
states that, yes, there's already been states that have done this in some way, shape, or form, and it doesn't work for them. Case in point, you could look in Oregon, you could look in San Francisco, you could look in other areas, and quite frankly, you have a huge pullback from many cities in even going after drugs.